to hearing your thoughts. Under the blue sky of a Savannah, Georgia morning, Marcus Thompson, a man in his 60s, and his wife, Elena, stumbled upon a small, peaceful cafe while on their way to their daughter's house for lunch. They decided to stop there, drawn by the quaint charm of the cafe nestled in a tree-lined street. Sitting at an old wooden table in the corner of the cafe, they were surrounded by the sound of birds chirping and the sunlight streaming through the large tree branches, casting sparkling rays across the table. Marcus poured coffee, the rich aroma of brewed beans blending with the scent of old wood, making the atmosphere feel even cozier. Elena looked around, soaking in the peacefulness of Savannah, and couldn't help but express her admiration. "Every time we come here, I feel like I'm stepping into a painting, darling. This city always makes me want to return." Marcus nodded, his gaze soft and affectionate as he looked at his wife. The ring of Elena's phone interrupted the moment, pulling them back to reality. She picked up and smiled when she saw their daughter Emily's name on the screen. "Hello, dear. Your dad and I are at a beautiful cafe in Savannah." "Mom, my husband has some urgent work at the office and can't go shopping. Could you please help me pick up a few things?" Emily's voice came from the other end of the line. "No problem, sweetheart. Your dad and I will take care of everything. What do you need?" Elena took out a pen and paper, ready to write down the list. "Well, I need some greens, a bag of brown rice, and, oh, if you see a fish market, please buy some fresh fish. Oh, and I'm out of peanut butter, so please get a jar too," Emily listed, her tone lightening with relief at knowing she was getting help. Elena carefully noted everything. "All right, dear. Your dad and I will get everything. No need to worry." "You're the best. Thank you so much, Mom. See you at home," Emily said happily. "Yes, dear. We'll see you soon." Elena smiled and hung up the phone. She turned back to Marcus, her eyes glowing with the simple happiness of a family day. Marcus stood up and pulled the chair for his wife. They walked back to their car, parked a short distance away from the cafe where they had just spent a peaceful morning. Marcus reached into his bag, searching for the car keys, while Elena stood by the car door on the opposite side. Before Marcus could find the keys, a police car slowly approached them. Two young officers inside, one named Officer Smith and the other Officer Lopez, seemed to be observing from a distance before deciding to stop next to Marcus's car. "I need to check your ID," Officer Lopez said, without a friendly greeting, just a cold and rigid command. Marcus remained calm in this tense situation. He pulled out his wallet and handed his ID to Lopez with a calm yet firm tone. "Is there a problem, officer?" Officer Lopez glanced at the documents, but his gaze remained fixed on Marcus, filled with skepticism and unfriendliness. "We are conducting a patrol in the area," he declared, his tone heavy as if Marcus was a potential criminal. "You are not from around here." Marcus felt his heartbeat quicken, a sense of unease rising within him. "I'm just trying to get home after stopping by the cafe. I haven't done anything wrong," he said, trying to maintain a calm voice. But inside, feelings of anxiety and irritation began to surface. "That's not my concern," Lopez replied, his voice still cold. "You will have to stay here until we complete our checks." The tension filled the air, and Marcus began to feel the injustice in how the officer was treating him. While his insides boiled, he knew that any excessive reaction could only make the situation worse. "My wife can record this incident," Marcus suddenly said, trying to use recording as a way to protect himself. "I don't want anything to be misrepresented." Lopez and Smith exchanged glances, their displeasure evident. One of the officers started to move closer, as if to immediately quash Marcus's intention. The situation grew more tense, and Marcus felt the proximity of a power he once trusted now becoming a threat. "I haven't done anything wrong," he reiterated, his voice full of determination. "We just came from the cafe at the corner. We're just on our way home to prepare lunch with our family," Elena chimed in, trying to diffuse the tense atmosphere, but her voice began to quiver. "I didn't ask you," the officer interrupted, startling Elena. Marcus was shocked and angered by Lopez's harsh attitude. "I don't understand what the issue is here," he said, trying to keep the conversation from escalating. "We are just passing through, not looking for trouble." Officer Smith, standing beside, frowned with dissatisfaction. "Sorry for the inconvenience, but we must take these measures to ensure security," he said, his eyes still full of suspicion. "I need to check your car," Lopez declared with undeniable resolve. Elena immediately objected, her unease overflowing. "There's no reason to check our car. We haven't broken any laws." Her voice grew louder, her indignation rising. Lopez, now impatient, stepped closer, his gaze cold and oppressive. "Is that so? A black couple, not from around here? That's enough reason for us to check," he said, his tone mocking as if their skin color and origin were the main reasons for his suspicion. Lopez's racially discriminatory words immediately made the atmosphere suffocating. Elena widened her eyes, shocked and outraged, while Marcus felt the tension in the air thicken as if it were tangible. He shook his head, unable to believe what he had just heard. "Are you judging us based on our skin color?" Marcus spoke up, his voice full of challenge yet firm. "This is racial discrimination, and I will not stand for it. I want to know the name of the person who directed you to act this way." Elena, realizing the situation was escalating, began recording the event with her mobile phone. "I am recording everything. We will not let ourselves be treated like this in silence," she declared, her voice filled with resolve. After a moment, Lopez said suggestively, "We need to take you to the station for further checks. We suspect there might be illegal goods in your vehicle." "That's a serious and completely baseless accusation," Marcus responded, his voice tense but still trying to remain calm. "You have no right to search my car without a warrant or probable cause. I request to see my lawyer." Officer Smith glanced at Lopez, seeking consensus. "We can do this the hard way or the easy way, Mr. Thompson. If you have nothing to hide, why not let us search to clear any doubts?" Lopez stepped closer to Marcus, his gaze cold and pressing. "You can't just film everything everywhere," he said to Elena, but without waiting for her to stop recording, turned to Marcus. "We will have to take you in for a thorough check." Before Marcus could react, Smith grabbed his arm tightly, turned his back to Elena, and handcuffed Marcus roughly. "Don't resist," Smith threatened, his voice challenging. He tightened the handcuffs, the pressure causing Marcus pain, blood rushing to his hands. "Who do you think you are to defy me?" Smith challenged, his voice menacing, reflecting unnecessary power abuse. Elena, though stunned by the situation, refused to stand by. She stepped forward, her eyes filled with outrage. "Who are you to treat an innocent citizen like this?" she shouted, her voice determined. "We haven't done anything wrong. People will hear about this. This is racial discrimination, and I won't let it go unnoticed." Officer Lopez, feeling the situation spiral out of control, suddenly made a drastic and dangerous decision. He drew a pepper spray can from his belt and, in an unimaginable moment, sprayed directly into Marcus and Elena's faces. Both were taken aback by this violent act. They coughed violently, their eyes streaming painfully, feeling deeply violated. Despite the pepper spray attack making it hard to breathe, Marcus still managed to shout between coughs, "This is an abuse of power. We haven't done anything wrong." Elena, feeling the intense burn and blinding pain, still clutched her phone tightly, determined to capture everything happening. She screamed, "This is violence! Someone help us, please!" Bystanders began to gather around, unable to ignore the unfolding events. The atmosphere grew heavier as more people witnessed the scene, and the tension escalated. Outrage erupted among the crowd as they saw the unnecessary violence. Many began shouting, demanding the officers to stop immediately. Some used their phones to record the entire incident, while others called the police to report the excessive actions. Officer Smith, despite the reaction from the bystanders, continued his aggressive behavior. He gripped Marcus's hand tightly, pulling him towards the police car, and forcibly pushed Marcus's head down into the trunk. Smith then tightened his grip around Marcus's neck, making him feel like he was running out of strength. "You don't have the right to speak to me like that," Smith growled, his tone no longer calm. Marcus, feeling overwhelmed by the pepper spray and violence, whispered, "This isn't fair. I haven't done anything wrong." His voice was hoarse, filled with despair, as if each word weighed heavily on his slender shoulders. His vision blurred by tears and the sting of the pepper spray, Marcus still tried to stand his ground. "I'm just an innocent citizen. I'm not a threat," he continued, his voice lost in the chaos. He felt as if the world around him was collapsing, and no one could hear his cries for help. Elena stood by, distressed to see her husband treated so harshly. "Stop!" she yelled, her heart feeling constricted. "You have no right to treat my husband like this. This is an abuse of power." Elena's panicked voice made the crowd even more agitated. They began to chant, demanding the officers stop the violent actions immediately. "No way! They don't have the right!" someone in the crowd shouted, and supportive voices rose from all around. Though the pepper spray caused Marcus and Elena's eyes to burn, they refused to be subdued. Marcus, struggling to breathe amid his coughing, shouted, "We won't stay silent! This is racial discrimination! People will know about this!" The police car quickly left the scene, its red and blue lights flashing and the siren breaking the morning air. The crowd continued to record every moment, their shouts and protests filling the air, expressing outrage over the police's brutal actions. Everyone in the crowd understood that this incident wasn't just a confrontation between Marcus, Elena, and the officers. It had become a symbol of the fight against injustice and racial discrimination in society. Officer Smith, sitting next to the driver, did not miss the opportunity to taunt Marcus. He turned to look at him, his face expressionless. "Who do you think you are to defy the police?" Smith challenged, his tone contemptuous. "People like you just cause trouble. If you knew what's good for you, you'd keep your mouth shut and accept the consequences for your actions." Marcus felt his blood boil at that insult. "I haven't done anything wrong," he argued, his voice weak from pain. "I just want to be treated like a normal citizen," Smith sneered, showing no sympathy. "A normal citizen? Look, you're not from here, and we have reason to suspect you. Don't pretend you're innocent." Each of Smith's words felt like a stab to Marcus's heart, and the unfairness in the officer's attitude deeply offended him. "If I'm not a citizen, then why are you checking me?" Marcus argued, trying to turn the tables, but it felt like punching an invisible wall. Smith didn't answer, just shrugged and turned away, as if Marcus's justifications were not worth hearing. As they entered the station, the heavy atmosphere was permeated by the smell of old cigarette smoke and stale coffee. The clacking of typewriters and the crackling of radios created a chaotic noise, reflecting the indifference and fatigue of those working there. Officer Smith and Lopez dragged Marcus to the reception desk, where another officer was recording information. "Write this down. Subject is resisting and uncooperative," Smith shouted, deliberately exaggerating the situation to apply pressure. Marcus looked Smith straight in the eye, his gaze firm, no longer intending to back down. "I want to contact my lawyer right now," he said slowly, his voice hoarse but resolute. "You are making a serious mistake." The receptionist frowned at Marcus's words, glancing between him and Smith, a hint of doubt flickering in his eyes. "What did he just say about a lawyer?" Smith shrugged, scoffing. "Let him talk. These guys always put on a show." The atmosphere in the room suddenly shifted, as a few other officers began to pay attention to the exchange. Smith felt his authority being challenged. "Quiet!" he barked, slamming his hand on the reception desk. "I don't want to hear another word." With those words, Smith's patience ran out. He started to throw heavy punches at Marcus's chest and shoulders. Each punch was a release of his fury, a desperate effort to regain some semblance of control he felt he was losing. Marcus did not fight back, despite the pain spreading throughout his body. He knew that any form of resistance would only make the situation worse. Instead, he clenched his teeth and endured each punch, trying to keep his mind calm. He needed to get through this, because otherwise, they would have every reason to blame him completely. Smith was panting after each hit, but showed no signs of stopping. He felt he was regaining control, as if each punch confirmed that he was right and Marcus was wrong. "Think you're smart?" Smith sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "Think you can fool me? I've dealt with too many like you." A young officer named Stevens, standing nearby, happened to hear the tense exchange between Marcus and his colleagues. Seeing Marcus being treated harshly, a familiar feeling stirred within him. Stevens vaguely recognized Marcus from articles. However, he was unsure about it and felt slightly confused in this situation. Stevens carefully watched every move of Smith and Lopez, realizing that the exaggeration and brutality in their handling of Marcus did not align with standard procedures. Doubts began to form in his mind. "Is this Marcus Thompson?" he wondered, his suspicion growing. As Smith continued his aggressive actions, Stevens decided that he needed to intervene. "Hold on," he spoke up. his voice not as strong but filled with sincerity. "I think we need to reevaluate this situation. He might not be the suspect we are looking for." Smith turned around, his face angry. "What are you talking about, Stevens? Don't interfere with my business." Stevens stood his ground. "I just think we should make sure we are not making a mistake. Let's verify his information before going too far." Smith's eyes flashed with anger, but Stevens sensed a shift in the atmosphere. He knew that without this intervention, the arrest could lead to serious consequences for both Marcus and the police officers themselves. Stevens's doubt ignited a spark of hope in Marcus, as he realized that not all officers agreed with the violent actions of their colleague. "Listen, Smith," Stevens began, "the arrest procedure must follow clear steps. We cannot simply rely on emotions to decide to arrest someone without valid reason." Smith angrily turned back to Stevens. "Procedure? We have reasons to suspect. He's resisting, uncooperative. That's enough to hold him. But that doesn't mean we have the right to treat him like this," Stevens countered, pointing towards Marcus, who stood there in pain. "He has rights that need to be protected. If he truly did nothing wrong, we'll be in big trouble if we don't follow procedures." Lopez interjected, "What are you talking about, Stevens? You think we're going to let someone who resists like him just get away? This could be dangerous." "Not everyone who is arrested is a criminal," Stevens firmly replied. "We need to investigate, verify information before acting. Check his documents again, or at least let him call his lawyer. It might save our careers." "Save your career," Smith scoffed. "What are you doing, Stevens? Why would you want to defend someone like him? We don't have time for games." Stevens, despite the opposition, tried to remain calm. "I'm not defending him. I'm just following procedure. If we're wrong, we'll face consequences. Remember, we're law enforcement, not thugs. Let's do the right thing." "Come on, let's double-check his information," Stevens continued, his tone becoming more urgent. "It's the right thing to do. Let's make sure we can go home without carrying a big scandal." After Elena uploaded the video of Marcus being arrested to social media, the community's reaction was immediate. Within an hour, the footage of Marcus being assaulted by the police officers spread like wildfire, drawing the attention of thousands. Many viewers were appalled by the unjust and brutal scene. They quickly shared the video, leaving hundreds of comments criticizing the officers' actions. Comments like, "This is not how the police should behave," and "We cannot stand by in the face of power abuse," flooded social media pages. As outrage grew, various community organizations and activists began to speak out. They called for people to gather and protest outside the police station where Marcus was detained. Amidst the tense atmosphere, Stevens decided to report the incident to Chief Roberts. He knew he needed to act to ensure the incident wasn't overlooked and that his colleagues' wrongdoing was investigated. Stevens found Roberts in his office. "Chief, I need to talk to you about the arrest of Marcus Thompson," Stevens said, his voice serious. "I witnessed what happened, and I think it needs to be seriously investigated." Roberts looked up from the stack of papers on his desk, his expression worried. "I've heard about the video, but we need to be careful in how we approach this. People might overreact," he said hesitantly. "You don't understand," Stevens continued. "Marcus was not just arrested, he was assaulted without just cause. The actions of Smith and Lopez are unacceptable. We need to conduct a fair investigation immediately." Roberts leaned back in his chair, weighing Stevens's words. "I'll consider it. But remember, we are in a sensitive period. If we're not careful, things could get worse. We can't let a single incident tarnish the reputation of the entire force." "That's not a reason to cover up wrongdoing," Stevens countered, his voice filled with resolve. "We need to show that we're not just about talking justice, but acting on it. This won't just help Marcus, but will also help the entire community trust us." Roberts pondered, feeling the weight of his responsibilities. "I understand your point, but there are factors to consider. Sometimes, protecting the image of the force is equally important." Stevens was dissatisfied with this response. Protecting the image of the force doesn't mean ignoring the truth. If we don't address the issue, even a small mistake could lead to much greater consequences. Hearing this, Chief Roberts became angry, his face turning red. "Are you trying to teach me how to do my job?" he barked, his voice echoing in the office. "I've been in this field for over 20 years, and I know what's best for the force and the community." Stevens was angered by Roberts' attitude but tried to remain calm. "I'm not trying to teach you, but I cannot stand idly by when I see wrongdoing right before my eyes. Justice isn't just a word, it's our responsibility." Roberts took a deep breath, trying to control his rising anger. "You should remember that my decisions affect everyone in this force. You can't always act on emotions," he replied, but his voice had softened. After the tense exchange with Stevens, Chief Roberts ordered Stevens to leave the office. As the door closed behind Stevens, Roberts sat back down, his gaze fixed on the turned-off computer screen. The office air was heavy with Roberts' deep contemplations. He began to ponder his options in the current situation. Although he knew that covering up was not the right solution, Roberts felt immense pressure to protect the police force's reputation, and especially the career of his son Smith. He realized that any decision to not investigate the truth could have serious consequences, not only for Marcus, but also for the community's trust in the police. Roberts considered using the department's discretionary funds, a slush fund, to quietly settle the matter. He knew that money could be used to compensate the victim or even to persuade some stakeholders that the incident wasn't worth further investigation. As Roberts was immersed in thought, he realized that he needed to have a direct conversation with Smith to understand more about what happened from his son's perspective. Decisively, he pressed a button on his desk phone and called Smith into the office. "Smith, come in here. We need to talk," Roberts said over the phone, his tone serious. As Smith entered the room, he appeared confused but tried to maintain a confident demeanor. "I'm here," Smith replied, his voice somewhat softer than usual. Roberts pointed to a chair across from his desk. "Sit down, Smith. I want to hear everything that happened with Marcus Thompson. Tell me the details, step by step." Smith sat down, focusing on his father, but feeling a bit uneasy inside. He sighed, preparing to justify his actions. "I believe everything that happened was necessary. We approached Marcus because we had reasonable suspicions, and the situation only became tense when he started to resist." Roberts listened intently, but his expression was complex as he heard his son's perspective. "Smith, are you really sure about that? The way you handled the situation might have exceeded what was necessary," he emphasized, his concern evident on his face. Smith was unyielding, his tone firm and unwavering. "I understand your concerns, Dad, but I believe all my actions were within legal bounds. Marcus resisted and refused to cooperate, and we had to act to ensure everyone's safety. I don't think we should give in to public pressure." Roberts looked straight into Smith's eyes, sensing the determination in his son's voice, but also seeing the arrogance in how Smith defended his actions. "You should understand that maintaining safety doesn't mean we can abuse our power. We need to protect the reputation of the police force and ensure justice for every citizen, no matter who they are," he said, the turmoil within forcing him to strive for calmness. Before Roberts could continue, the phone on his desk rang, interrupting his train of thought. Glancing at the screen, he recognized the number of Johnson, the chairman of the police commission. A sense of urgency passed through him, knowing that this conversation could shape how he handled the current situation, and he couldn't hesitate any longer. "Roberts here," he said carefully, trying to keep his tone calm. "Roberts, I've seen the video of the arrest," Johnson began, his tone softer than usual, as if trying to foster a friendly atmosphere. "We need a reasonable solution for this situation. Have you thought of any way to handle it? Johnson, I think we can settle this matter smoothly. Perhaps we don't need to make a big deal out of it. I'm considering some options to ensure everything goes back to normal." He tried to convince Johnson that the issue could be resolved without much disruption. "Just let that crowd protest. Once they tire and lose interest, everything will go back to normal. We don't need to rush into a noisy investigation." Johnson was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, "What about the videos being circulated? What do you think about them?" Roberts hummed, trying to find a way to dodge the question. "Ah, those videos, we're keeping an eye on them, but remember, videos don't always reflect the full truth. There could be other factors that viewers don't understand." "Roberts, what are you implying when you say handle it gently? Are you trying to cover this up?" Johnson's tone was accusatory, his patience seemingly worn thin. Roberts realized the precariousness of his position. "Smith is involved in this. He's my son. I can't just—" Before he could finish, Do you know who this is?" Johnson interrupted sharply, emphasizing each word sternly. "Marcus Thompson is a former judge. He's been working in Florida for decades. We can't treat this as a minor incident. This is a very serious matter. Listen, Roberts," Johnson continued, his tone leaving no room for dissent. "We need a thorough and public investigation into this matter. There needs to be third-party involvement to ensure objectivity and fairness. This isn't just about protecting the honor of an individual or a unit. We're talking about the integrity and public trust in the legal system, and I, personally, will oversee this investigation." That afternoon, shortly after the phone conversation, Police Commission Chairman Johnson personally arrived at the police station. He wasn't alone. Alongside him was Alex, a reputable lawyer and close friend of Marcus Thompson. Their presence at the police station immediately drew attention, highlighting the seriousness of the situation and Johnson's commitment to handling the matter openly and transparently. When Roberts saw Johnson and Alex enter, he felt the weight of the situation. Johnson greeted Roberts formally and immediately got to the point. "Roberts, we're here not just to review what happened, but to ensure that the investigation is carried out thoroughly, objectively, and fairly. I've brought lawyer Alex with me, who will help us establish a proper procedure for this investigation." Alex nodded, expressing his readiness to assist. "We want to ensure that everything is handled lawfully and that Marcus's rights are respected. Marcus is not only my friend, but also a respected member of the legal community, and we cannot allow this matter to be handled carelessly." Roberts, feeling the mounting pressure, knew he had no choice but to cooperate. "I understand, and I assure you that our police department will provide all necessary documents, evidence, and support for the investigation. We too desire for the matter to be resolved accurately and fairly." Johnson looked at Roberts with a determined gaze. "This is an opportunity to prove that we can do the right thing. We will monitor this process closely, and I hope that not only we but also the community will see the transparency and fairness in how we handle this situation." Immediately, Johnson stepped forward to the station entrance to address the media and the public about their approach to the incident. He stood firm in front of the microphones, prepared to express his views on the importance of justice and transparency in the investigation. Johnson began by emphasizing the importance of fair treatment for all citizens. "We understand that the community is very concerned about this matter," he said. "I want everyone to know that both the Police Commission and the Police Department are taking this matter very seriously. Marcus Thompson, first and foremost, is our citizen, and he deserves all the protections and justice that the law guarantees." He continued, "We have initiated an independent investigation to ensure that all aspects of the incident are objectively and fairly reviewed. This is not just about protecting the honor of an individual or a unit. This is about ensuring that the public's trust in our legal system is maintained and strengthened." Johnson also emphasized the necessity of handling everything transparently. "We are committed to conducting this investigation openly. I will personally oversee the investigation process to ensure everything is conducted fairly and without bias." Throughout the interview, Johnson remained resolute and composed, reaffirming that the primary goal was to regain and maintain public trust in the fairness and effectiveness of the legal system. "We must act decisively not only to resolve this case, but also to restore confidence in our law enforcement agency. It is our responsibility to every citizen," he concluded. After finishing the interview with the media, Johnson slowly walked away from the press area. As he was leaving, his gaze inadvertently swept over the waiting area where Marcus Thompson's wife and daughter were sitting. They looked very anxious and tired, their eyes intently following every development. Noticing their presence, Johnson could not miss the opportunity to show his support and care. Johnson approached them with a solemn yet warm demeanor. "Mrs. Thompson, Emily, I am very sorry for what your family is going through," he began, his voice gentle and sincere. "I want you to know that we are doing everything possible to ensure that the truth comes to light and justice is served." Marcus's wife, clearly weary and stressed, seemed somewhat comforted by Johnson's words. "Thank you for saying that, Chairman Johnson. We just want everything to be handled fairly," she said, her voice trembling. Johnson nodded. "I understand, and I will personally monitor the investigation closely. Please contact me directly if there is anything you need, or if you have additional information you think we need to know. My door is always open to your family." After a few more words, Johnson left them to their privacy, but before walking away, he gently placed his hand on their shoulders in a comforting gesture. Then he turned back, carrying a commitment that nothing would deviate from the path of justice. Johnson's resolve and sincerity were not only evident in his words, but also in his actions, sending a strong message. Finally, Johnson, Alex, and Marcus met in a private room. Marcus sat upright, a cigarette in hand, trying to remain calm despite the vivid memories of the arrest still fresh in his mind. He took a deep breath before beginning his recount. That day, my wife and I were at a cafe near our home preparing for lunch with our daughter. Marcus started, his voice steady yet nervous. We had a wonderful morning, never imagining that something terrible would happen right afterward. Marcus continued. As we left the cafe, 2 police officers approached us without any clear reason. They demanded to check our IDs and began questioning me suspiciously. I tried to explain that I hadn't done anything wrong, but they wouldn't listen. Did they provide any specific reason for the arrest? Alex asked, trying to note every detail. No, there was no specific reason given. They just said they were patrolling and suspected me. I can't understand why they would suspect me. A regular citizen just heading home with my wife, Marcus replied, his voice filled with frustration. Johnson nodded, understanding Marcus's feelings. So, what happened next? I felt things got out of control when I started recording the incident with my wife's phone. I felt it was necessary to document everything to protect my rights, Marcus explained. But when I did that, one of the officers, Smith, grabbed me, pushed my head down into the car, and handcuffed me. I didn't resist because I knew that would only make things worse. Alex looked directly at Marcus, showing empathy. Their action was completely unacceptable. Marcus continued. They sprayed pepper spray on me and my wife, making it impossible for us to breathe. I cannot understand how the police could treat an innocent person this way. I was just trying to go home to my wife, and had done nothing wrong. Johnson listened attentively, and when Marcus paused, he asked, Did you notice any signs that the officers had intended to abuse their power beforehand? Marcus shook his head. I don't think they had such an intention initially, but the excessive nature of their actions suggests something was wrong. It could be a lack of training or a bias in how they approached the situation. Alex took careful notes, and Marcus felt somewhat relieved sharing his painful experiences. The conversation laid the groundwork for building an action plan, and Marcus knew the details of the incident would be used to fight for justice not just for himself, but also for others who might face similar situations. Following that, an internal investigation was immediately initiated to clarify the details related to the arrest of Marcus Thompson. The investigative team included a group of experienced and neutral officers, unswayed by the internal tensions within the police department. From the start, they collected all available evidence, including video footage from Elena's phone, reports from witnesses at the scene, and any documents related to the arrest process. They also conducted interviews with Marcus, his wife, and daughter, as well as Officers Smith and Lopez, to clarify what had happened from multiple perspectives. As the investigation progressed, the evidence became overwhelmingly clear. Elena's video accurately captured the officers' actions, from demanding to check IDs to the violent behaviors that Marcus endured. Witnesses also confirmed that Marcus did not exhibit any significant resistance. He simply tried to protect his rights. This further reinforced the doubts about how Smith and Lopez had conducted their duties. Questions about whether they adhered to procedures and police regulations began to arise, increasing the pressure on them throughout the investigation. During the evidence collection process, Roberts was required to provide documents and internal reports related to the incident, putting him under significant pressure from both the commission and the community. The truth gradually emerged, with each detail unveiled, from how Marcus was approached to the brutal actions he suffered. It became clear to everyone that this investigation would not only clarify the specific incident, but could also lead to significant changes in the way the police force operated in the future. As initial conclusions began to take shape, Johnson felt a sense of relief, knowing that efforts to restore public trust in the police force were slowly paying off. 3 days later, after the internal investigation concluded, Johnson prepared a press conference to announce the findings and the sanctions for the 3 individuals involved in Marcus Thompson's arrest. He stood before a crowd of reporters waiting outside the police station, feeling the weight of public attention. "Good morning, everyone," Johnson began, his voice confident yet carrying a hint of seriousness. "Today I stand here not only to announce the results of our internal investigation, but also to reaffirm our commitment to transparency and justice within the Atlanta police force." He paused for a moment, observing the attentive faces. "The investigation has clarified that the actions of Officers Smith and Lopez in the arrest of Mr. Marcus Thompson were not just a mistake, but a serious violation of our regulations and ethical standards. They not only acted violently, but also abused the power entrusted to them. Therefore, I am announcing that Officer Smith and Officer Lopez will be dismissed immediately. Their actions are unforgivable and unworthy of the positions they held," Johnson declared, causing a stir among the reporters. Johnson continued, "As for Chief Roberts, he will be suspended while we conduct further investigations to determine whether he was involved in covering up the officer's misconduct. We need to ensure that every member of our force is held accountable for their actions. I would also like to announce that Mr. Marcus Thompson's family has decided to sue the police over this incident. They have filed a lawsuit seeking compensation for the physical and emotional harm they have suffered. We will fully cooperate with their attorney to resolve this lawsuit fairly." He continued, "I want everyone to know that this is an important step in improving how the police force operates. We will not tolerate any abuse of power and are committed to implementing necessary retraining for all team members to prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future." As Johnson concluded his speech, he faced questions from reporters about the next steps and the police force's commitment to reform. He responded firmly, emphasizing the importance of restoring public trust and ensuring fairness for all citizens. When Johnson's press conference ended, Marcus Thompson was invited to speak before the crowd of reporters and citizens waiting outside the police station. He stood at the podium, microphone in hand, his gaze resolute yet filled with emotion. The atmosphere became solemn, everyone focused on him, awaiting the powerful words of a man who had endured injustice. He took a deep breath and began, "This incident has unleashed unimaginable pain for my family. As an ordinary citizen, simply trying to live my life, I was treated like a criminal solely because of the color of my skin. This is an unacceptable reality. This is not just a personal issue. It is a stark reminder of what is happening in our society." Marcus glanced at his wife and daughter standing nearby, emotions swelling within him. "I cannot allow this injustice to happen again. We need to stand up, speak the truth, and demand change. We cannot just stand by while those responsible for protecting us become abusers of power," he continued. "I hope this lawsuit will not only bring justice for me, but also for others who have endured racism and violent behavior from the police. We need to change how the police interact with the community so that every citizen is treated fairly, regardless of their skin color or background." In closing, Marcus asserted, "Change starts with us. I will not stop fighting for justice until we can live in a fairer society, where everyone is respected and protected." After his speech, the crowd of reporters and citizens was visibly moved. They recognized that his words were not just a call to action, but also a powerful reminder of everyone's responsibility to build a fair and equitable community. Shortly after, Marcus Thompson received compensation from the lawsuit against the police department. With a clear vision in mind, Marcus decided to use this compensation to establish a nonprofit organization called Voices for Justice. The organization's goal was to support African American individuals and other disadvantaged communities in their fight against racism, protect their rights, and provide the necessary resources to help them overcome the challenges they face. To bring this idea to life, Marcus sought support from experienced and influential individuals in the community. One of the first people he reached out to was Johnson, the chairman of the police commission, who had stood by him throughout the previous investigation. Johnson was very supportive of Marcus's idea and decided to help by connecting him with resources and other organizations that shared the same goals. Johnson organized a meeting with community leaders and potential donors, introducing Marcus and the vision for the Voices for Justice organization. He emphasized the importance of advocating for the rights of disadvantaged individuals and affirmed that Marcus had the experience and determination needed to make this organization successful. Voices for Justice would not only provide legal assistance, but also organize educational workshops on civil rights and legal entitlements for community members. In addition, the organization aimed to create a support network for those who had experienced racism, helping them share their experiences and seek mutual support. Under Johnson's guidance, the organization quickly attracted community and donor attention. Many people supported Marcus's vision and contributed their time, talents, and resources to help Voices for Justice grow. Johnson even assisted Marcus in establishing relationships with other nonprofits and donors, thereby enhancing the organization's ability to access resources. One afternoon, after Voices for Justice had been operational for a few days, Marcus and Johnson met at a quiet cafe in the city. The warm yellow light from the decorative lamps created an intimate atmosphere, allowing them to comfortably discuss the past and future plans. "Marcus," Johnson began, looking deeply into his eyes, "I truly admire what you've done. Establishing this organization is not just a significant step for you, but also for the entire community. I can clearly see that you are making a difference." Marcus smiled, though he also appeared contemplative. "Thank you, Johnson, but I can't help but think about what happened before. That arrest harmed not just me, but my whole family. I feel like everything has been turned upside down." "That was a painful experience," Johnson replied, his voice tinged with empathy. "I too have struggled with my sense of responsibility. The actions of the officers not only caused significant doubt within the community, but also made me reconsider how we perform our duties. I know that restoring trust won't be easy." Marcus nodded, understanding evident on his face. "I have struggled with pain and anger every day, but what keeps me going is the awareness that I can do something to help others. People need to know they are not alone in the fight against racism. They need to feel that there are those willing to stand by them." Johnson sighed, looking out the window at the bustling street, where life continued despite the injustices outside. "I am also working to reform how the police force interacts with the community. However, I know that these changes cannot come from words alone. We need real action, and that action must start at the top." "We need more than meetings and promises," Marcus said, determination strengthening his voice. "I want my organization to not only provide legal support, but also conduct educational workshops to raise awareness about citizens' rights. If we cannot change people's thoughts and actions, everything will just keep repeating, and that is something I cannot accept." Johnson nodded, his eyes filled with respect and admiration. "You have a wonderful vision, Marcus. I will fully support you in implementing those educational programs. We need to create an environment where everyone feels safe and protected, a place where their voices are heard and their rights are respected." The conversation between the two men flowed, covering everything from painful memories to dreams and hopes for the future. They discussed specific plans for the organization, from organizing workshops to developing a legal support program for victims of discrimination. Marcus felt Johnson's strong support, which empowered him further. "We can't change everything overnight, but small steps will lead to significant changes," Marcus said, his eyes bright with determination. "With your support and that of others, I believe we can build a stronger community where justice and equality are not just theories, but everyday realities." Johnson smiled, looking into Marcus's eyes with faith and hope. "I believe in you, Marcus. Let's work together to turn these dreams into reality." The conversation concluded, but both felt that this was just the beginning of a long journey ahead, a journey they would embark on together, with lofty goals and deep passion. How did this narrative resonate with you? In what ways have prejudice and injustice affected you or your surrounding community? We invite you to share your reflections in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this message impactful, please hit like. Share this video to raise awareness, and remember to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on more insightful stories and messages. Together, we can help create a fairer and more just society. Wishing you a fantastic day ahead.